Well, joining us for our Thursday panel, Liberal MP for the Sydney seat in Wentworth, Dave Sharma, and Labor MP for Jagga Jagga in Melbourne, Kate Thwaites. Thank you to both of you for joining us.
Good afternoon.
Dave Sharma, I want to start with you. A lot of discussion about this issue of China, the politicisation, as Labor has described it, of its stance on China. When you've got people like the ASIO Director General, Mike Burgess, coming out and saying he doesn't want his agency's work being politicised. You've got people like Dennis Richardson saying this just plays into the hands of China, seeing this division on the floor of the House. What's the end game here?
Well, firstly, I don't think that's a fair characterisation of what Mike Burgess and Dennis Richardson said. And I think I heard Dennis Richardson quite starkly say this morning that, of course, we don't want to stifle legitimate political debate. We need to remember we live in a democracy here, and if we're going to self-censor or say that certain areas of national debate, important areas of national debate, are off limits, well, I think that's going to be, it's fundamentally at odds with our system of government. Now, we should and be able to have these debates about national security, and the truth is that Labor's record when they were last in government gives us cause for concern. They cut the defence budget to its lowest level it's been since 1938. They pulled us out of the Quad. They did a number of things that they didn't foreshadow in advance of election, and this is what we're trying to test out this time.
But this has been something, if you're pointing to Labor's record there, you've had the entire term of the 46th Parliament to be prosecuting this case. Why is it in the last couple of days that it seems that we've gone from 0 to 100 in 4 seconds flat?
Well, I don't agree. I mean, I've certainly been prosecuting this case all through the Parliament, as has the government. I mean, I think national security these days features a lot more heavily in the national political debate than it did in the past. And we've had continuous public discussions about our relationship with China. I mean, you'll recall that...
But the barbed attacks on Labor seem to have certainly ramped up.
Well, I mean, we came under criticism from Labor 2 years ago for calling for an international inquiry into the origins of COVID-19. If you recall, we were accused of mismanaging the relationship with China. I think this has been a live debate, at least for this term of government since I've been in Parliament. And I welcome that fact. I mean, we should be allowed to, as politicians, represent different viewpoints and have an argument and have a difference of opinion about these issues. That's how you get good government.
Kate Thwaites, how do Labor combat this approach that the coalition is taking here? We've heard from your leader that there is no daylight between the two parties when it comes to the relationship with China, but there are these comments about how the coalition could improve the situation that seem to be used as a weapon here.
I've just got to start by saying I'm really surprised to hear Dave take this line on this. Dave's a former ambassador. He's a diplomat, and he actually was appointed by a Labor Prime Minister in the days when we knew that national security was more important than politicking. And absolutely, we should have discussions on national security, but they need to be reasonable, rational discussions. And that is not what is happening in this Parliament. It is not what the Prime Minister is doing, and it's genuinely quite frightening that our Prime Minister is prepared to put the possibility of political advancement and a bit of political gain above the national interest and above national security. And the head of ASIO doesn't do media very often. In the last couple of days, he's done it twice. The former head of ASIO has done media, both saying how concerning this behaviour is. It is nothing but politicking, and it is really concerning that that is what the Morrison government is using the dying days of this Parliament to do. I think Dave knows that. He knows better. He probably can't say better because of where he sits now, but he's been part of this and he knows how dangerous and damaging this can be.
Well, I'd just make a comparison here. Before the 2013 election, the then Labor Prime Minister Kevin Rudd said that if we implemented our border protection policies and stopped the boats, we were risking war with Indonesia. Now, if you want to tell me that's not politicising national security or fanning the flames of national security for political purposes, I don't know what is.
So is it an argument that if both sides do it, it's
not? No, but I'm just saying let's not pretend that this isn't part of the political discourse. I remember the 2004 election. A key part of that debate was Mark Latham's promise to bring the troops out of Iraq by Christmas. That was a key feature of the national debate, as it should have been. But let's not say that one area is sacrosanct and can't be subject to political debate. I mean, you can't just play this national security card every time you want to avoid scrutiny on your record.
You're playing the national security card. It's the Prime Minister and the other ministers in Parliament standing up and playing the national security card, talking about Manchurian candidates on the House of the Representatives. Is that in Australia's national interest? It's not. We're not having a debate. We are having a quite obvious attempt by the Morrison government to politicise what is a important matter of national security. And as the Leader of the Opposition has been very clear, we stand with the government on these matters. So what is the debate about? The debate is about trying to score political points. And it is really disappointing that time after time, in this House of Representatives, in this Parliament, that's what we see this Prime Minister do. We see him do it with this, we see him do it with other divisive debates that are put up just to get a wedge out of Labor. And that's all that's happening at the moment.
I do want to come back to you in just a moment, Dave Sharma, but my original question to you, I'm keen to get a sense from you how Labor tackles this campaign that's being waged against it. You've outlined what you think the coalition is doing wrong here, but how does the opposition present its image to the Australian public that it isn't going to be selling out Australia's sovereignty, that it isn't going to be undermining the work that's been done here with China?
Well, just as I've done, we've been clear all the way through that we take national security very seriously. Anthony Albanese's been very clear about that, and he's explained that in the House again today. And again, I would make the point that I think what is worrying for the Australian people and what is the scary part about where we are right now is that the Prime Minister is prepared to play politics to this degree with our national security. That is really frightening, that the head of ASIO has to come out twice in 2 days, I think it was, to explain how damaging that is. That's frightening and scary.
Dave Sharma, it's a question that's been put to a lot of your colleagues today. Do you believe Richard Marles is a Manchurian candidate?
No, I don't. I think the Prime Minister
wrong to say it?
No, look, I'm not going to characterise whether he's right or wrong. He withdrew the comment, and I believe he stands by that withdrawal. But I think certainly things that Richard Marles has said and done in his parliamentary career, including in this last term and including on his most recent visit to Beijing, should be open and subject to scrutiny. And I just make this point. I don't want to live in an Australia where we can't debate certain things because our spy chiefs tell us not to. I think they also need to be careful not to interfere in what's properly the domain of political debate and elected representatives.
You're also a former diplomat, though.
Exactly.
Does this debate affect the work that our diplomats in Beijing would be doing? I mean, at the moment, we can't get our ministers can't get phone calls with their Chinese counterparts. You've got what has been widely described as a incredible frostiness in the relationship there. If the Chinese authorities are seeing this debate play out in this building, does it undermine the efforts to keep that relationship going for whatever purposes the government of the day wants to do so?
No, not at all. I mean, in many countries around the world, United States, Canada, the United Kingdom, France, Germany, they're having these sorts of internal discussions and debates about how to manage their relationship with China. I think that's healthy and for the good, because in our systems of government, you get better ideas by allowing the competition of ideas and the contest of ideas.
Dave, this isn't a competition of ideas.
It is. I mean,
it's a scare campaign.
No, Labor's trying to shut down debate on this issue. I mean, you're free to say what you're going to do and how your policies are going to run, but you shouldn't be scared of the debate. And this is what's happening here.
It's not a debate. It's
national
a scare
security card to say we can't run it. I mean, it's a bit rich having a Labor member of Parliament tell me that we're running a scare campaign after everything they've done with, whether it was the vaccine rollout or rat tests or anything else or any number of
the highly successful vaccine rollout, you mean? That one?
Yeah,
that one in the middle of the pandemic.
We have one of the highest
when we waited too long.
I'm
a Victorian. We went through the second wave without our vaccines, Dave. Be careful.
Yeah, you know why we didn't have the vaccines? Because the TGA had not approved them.
We didn't have the vaccines because they hadn't been ordered.
I think
this government at every stage of the pandemic has failed us. We didn't have vaccines in aged care earlier this year for booster shots. I had people in my community calling me saying the booster shot for people in aged care had been put off by a number of weeks, by up to a month in some case. So I don't think talking about scare campaigns around vaccines and booster shots is helpful either. These are real issues. They do affect people's lives.
Exactly.
For you to be saying that we're doing scare campaigns on those is just not true. What we are trying to do is get the Morrison government to do its job and to make sure that people, particularly vulnerable people in aged care, are getting the vaccines they need. And that is not the track record of what has happened through this pandemic.
Well, I think we're getting a sense of what Labor's going to be campaigning on during this upcoming campaign. I do want to ask you, Dave Sharma, because you face quite an interesting battle in your seat with one of the high-profile independent MPs, or not MPs, prospective, aspirational MPs, I should say. You're
Part of
still
the Climate
MP.
200 group.
Yeah, Allegra Spender in that seat. Simon Holmes à Court at the press club yesterday was saying that the money he'll be pushing into those campaigns comes with no strings attached. He's not going to be expecting these candidates to vote one way or the other on bits of legislation or whichever way they want to support whoever forms government. Do you buy that?
Well, I don't, because these candidates have been selected not through a democratic process but by a committee. And the same person who's the financial officer of Climate 200 is also the financial officer and on the board of the Wentworth Independence Group. It's clear that they're running on the same platform. It's clear that they're running with similar slogans and T-shirts. It's clear, in fact, that their political advertising is all aligned as well. So you can't pretend to me that this is not a political party in all but name. And I think they should just do the right thing here and level with the public and say, yeah, we're running a number of candidates in a number of seats, just like the United Australia Party is, just like the Greens are. This is our platform. This is what we're going to do if you vote for us. But to pretend this is some sort of organic grassroots movement really, I think, is an insult to the intelligence of the Australian people and the voters.
Does it affect the way you conduct your affairs in this building, like the way in which you would be voting and all that? Keeping one eye on the campaign that the independent candidates are running and the issues that they are trying to say the coalition has failed on?
I think every member of parliament is always trying to do their best to represent their electorate from whichever side of politics they're from. And they're always mindful of what are their views of their electorate and how do they best represent them. And I don't think any member of parliament takes their seat for granted. So I certainly don't. But I've taken that attitude, ever since I was first elected.
Kate Thwaites, we are running out of time, but I do want to get your views on this broader shift towards a lot of independent candidates, high-profile candidates. What impact do you think they're actually going to have on this campaign, or are we overblowing it?
I don't know, Matt. It's a bit hard to tell at the moment, but I would say what I think is we see a lot of independents running in a lot of Liberal-held seats. Goes to that broader point I was just talking about, which is that I think the Morrison government is clearly not addressing the issues that most people in the community are feeling at the moment. Climate, what's happened during the pandemic, a National Anti-Corruption Commission. Those are actually the platforms that a lot of those independents are running on. And what it says to me is that what the Morrison government has been bringing to this place, what we've been spending our time on in this place, probably also the conduct that people say in this place, is not what they expect from politicians. It's not what they expect from their elected representatives. And so they are looking elsewhere for people who they think might bring that. So,
does it risk undermining the Labor vote, though, as well, as an alternative government?
I think in most cases these independents are running against Liberal candidates. But of course, as Labor members, we've absolutely got to be alive to what our communities are saying to us and what they want us to run on. And that's why we are running for making sure that we're addressing the climate crisis, making sure that we do get a National Anti-Corruption Commission, making sure that we're paying attention to and fixing the crisis in aged care. These are really important things. It shouldn't be left to independents to address them.
It is an important point, though. I mean, these independent candidates are only running against coalition MPs, not against a single Labor MP, as far as I'm aware. That again suggests to me that there's a political alignment. I mean, you'd be mad to think otherwise.
Okay, we do have to wrap it up there. Dave Sharma, Kate Thwaites, thank you for joining us.
Thanks so much.